The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
All right, folks, we are live at LYFY Public House, Downtown Coeur. Welcome to Idaho Signal. It is March 6, 2024, and we're doing it. This is a beta test. We have no idea how this is going to go, but we're going to give it a shot. We got a great guest here today. Kate Hartley will be with us momentarily, but I just wanted to get you guys up to speed on things that are happening down at the Capitol. The House is in session right now, but we're also going to look at the Senate. The Senate is going through appropriation bills, and this is the process like we've been talking about. We had Senator Bjorky on the other day, and we talked about how we have the maintenance bills that are going through that are funding the basics of all the departments of government. Those are getting signed by the governor, okay? And now we have these appropriations bills. This is where they're adding on to the budget of these departments. And so one by one, they're being debated now in the Senate. And this is a spectacular, fantastic thing for transparency, for budget reform, and for Idaho in general. And so we're not going to listen to all these debates because they're just debating numbers and such. But we see Senator Dave Lent up there debating on one of these appropriation bills. And we had a bill come through earlier where I think it was what I was watching was Senator Lenny standing up and saying, hey, this is a 56% increase over last year on these items alone. And for that reason, I am not going to vote for this budget. That doesn't mean that department will not be functioning. That just means if it failed, that the department doesn't get their wish list items. And then they got to go back to the drawing board and try it again. So this is all about transparency. This is the fantastic part of this. So let's go over to the House and check out what's happening there. Once again, we are live at LYFY Public House. It's pretty fun to see all this. This place is abuzz today. And as we look over at the House feed, they are debating, let's go full screen on that. They are debating House Bill 596. And if I got my notes here correctly, 596 is that not on my list? Is it on my list? Who knows? I don't have my list in front of me. That's okay. All right. So that's what we're doing. So today, let me set up what we're doing today. So today we're at LYFY Public House. This is downtown Coeur d'Alene. We're going to have my guests here momentarily. We've got a great crowd in here, and I can't wait to get started. So let's reset. Let's reset. I know we just started, but I want to properly bring in our guests. So let's go ahead and take a short break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to reset the stage here, and we're going to bring in Kate Hartley. We'll be right back.
Surplus, which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto Perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, we are back. Joining me now is attorney Kate Hartley from the Pacific Justice Institute. Kate, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm so glad we're here in person. We've had you on multiple times throughout this session so far, and what's really spectacular about it is that to live in a town where a First Amendment attorney also lives is great, because it means I get to know you a little bit better, and then pick your brain on all things First Amendment, because Idaho Signal really is at its core, it's a First Amendment thing. It's all about free speech. It's all about speaking truth to power and making sure that what goes on in Boise in the legislature is protecting our rights. And we're seeing a lot of bills come through that deal with First Amendment issues, not just free speech, but religious freedom, even the right of assembly, the right to redress your government for violating your rights. So I kind of wanted to just let's take a step back and let's just let everybody know what the First Amendment is all about. And from your perspective, what is it about the First Amendment that is so important? Why is it number one? What makes it up from the perspective of a First Amendment lawyer?
It's a great question. Thanks again for having me. And the First Amendment really, I think, is a symbol of some of our first liberties in this country. If you look at the context in our history, right? People were escaping from a country where they couldn't worship in the way that they wanted to. They didn't have these fundamental liberties to speak in the way that they wanted to. So the First Amendment addresses that. It says that you won't be mandated. The Establishment Clause, the first part of the First Amendment, says that you won't be mandated to worship in a specific way, right? There won't be a government-sponsored religion. You also have the free exercise of religion. So you can have the right to belief, as well as the right to live out your faith in your daily life, the free exercise clause. So then just walk us back to that. How is that different from what people were living under in where they came from Europe, from England, Denmark, whatever was going on? What was the life like as a religious person under that? There was state-mandated religion, right? There was a church in England that was completely entwined with the government, and that was, what you had to do. You didn't have freedom to worship in a different way. So that was where they were coming from. You hear me better? So that's what those people came from. So that was obviously a fundamental reason why the framers of our Constitution wrote it in the way that they did.
Because they didn't want the government dictating how people should worship.
Correct.
And
exactly.
What are the things that people were doing? I don't know if this is getting too much into the weeds, but what were the things that the government was saying to the people on how to worship? Was it really on how to believe, or was it how to dress, or how to show up to church, or?
I think it was all of the above. It was all intertwined. It was just mandated by the government. The government and the church are really one, right? And so those were things that you didn't have a choice. You didn't have a freedom of choice, right, and how you went about those things. And so so historically that's why, for me, that's why this is such an important area of work. And obviously since the time that our Constitution was written, a lot of things have changed, and this has come a long way. Some good, some bad, I guess. And I think throughout history, we do see that you do have to continue to fight for these liberties because sometimes the government can't help themselves to come in and take those freedoms away. So it's a continuous fight, just as it was for the original people that came here and fought specifically for this.
So when the framers were putting together the idea of having, a Bill of Rights to accompany the Constitution, which basically formed how the government should function, and the Bill of Rights were there to be laid as a negative right. Can you explain what negative rights are? Is that the right term? Negative rights? That the government doesn't have a right to do something. The government should not do something. So it's a negative right.
Correct.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Right. So and again, from a First Amendment standpoint, that is the very first part of the First Amendment. It says that Congress shall make no law. So again, they cannot establish a religion. They cannot prohibit you from the free exercise of religion. So I think that's what you're getting at. It means the government cannot step in these certain areas, right, of your life. An individual has a freedom to choose. So you're exactly right. I think it's when the government can't be involved.
So when you see cases where the government will overstep their bounds, and obviously the government is made up of people. So are we just not electing the right people? Are there people being hired by the government that think that they can overstep these bounds? Because it's 2024. You're a First Amendment attorney. You are constantly taking on cases where the government is overstepping their bounds in this area, right?
Correct. Yes.
So
why?
Why? Why?
I ask myself this all the time, right? I think it's a combination of, I truly believe some people don't understand what people's rights are. Whether that's the government who's doing it or the individual who's being potentially aggrieved by the government. I think part of it is just a total lack of knowledge and just have a misunderstanding of the freedoms that we have from the First Amendment and otherwise. And then I also think sometimes it's just that the government hasn't been held accountable in a lot of situations where they are overstepping and then they overstep a little bit more and a little bit more and no one says anything about it, and so they see that they're getting away with it and so they keep going. So I think I see both of those coming into play, both lack of knowledge and then just lack of accountability that leads to further overstepping,
right.
I guess.
So traditionally, when we think about big First Amendment cases, at least in modern times, I think of a big case that was Lenny Bruce, the comedian Lenny Bruce, where he was being dragged off a stage because he was saying naughty words, at a private nightclub at night in front of adults. The things that we're dealing with today, when it comes to the government restricting speech, it more has to do with not just like being offended. But not being offended by dirty words or vulgar language or anything, or even the subject matter, but being offended by just mislabeling somebody or using a pronoun or such. And we'll get into some of the bills that are going through Boise right now. But where do you think where does that come from? Where does that attitude come from? That we need to restrict what people are saying based on hurting somebody's feelings?
I think it's being taught from the ground up, whether that's in public schools, whether that's in media. I think that has been grilled into people, that being offended is this horrible thing and we all have to agree with everything or we're not compassionate, right? And so I do think that's where that comes from. And obviously within the First Amendment, you don't have a right to not be offended. That is not part of it.
I don't see it written in there.
It's definitely not part of it. And in fact, I would say the things labeled offensive actually need the greatest amount of First Amendment protection, right? It's not the popular opinion necessarily that needs the protection. It's the unpopular opinion that needs the protection. That's when those constitutional rights really come into play, right? And so I think it's playing on people's emotions, that they're not compassionate if they say something that's, quote, offensive, even if that's their religious belief or that's their personal belief or whatever it may be. And that's not sound legally, I guess.
We've talked before about a government having a compelling interest. Is that the right term? So So explain again what a compelling interest is, and is the government then really trying to make a compelling interest when it comes to, quote, offensive speech? Is that what their thing is? Like, it's so offensive to people that we have a compelling interest to get involved?
Yeah, so if you're talking about speech or religion, for exercise of religion, the government can only step in and regulate that speech or that belief and that faith practice if they have what's called a compelling interest, right? And it's a very high barrier for the government to show, so it has to be pretty extreme, right, for the government to say, okay, this is so important, meaning our interest as the government is so important that it overrides your ability to speak or your ability to live out your faith in the way that you see fit. And so as far as what you're saying, can the government argue that, well, they have a compelling interest to not offend people? No. I mean, that would not
just blanket no, right?
suffice.
Yeah.
And one example I think everyone can relate to is, during COVID, right? The government kept saying, well, because of COVID, we have this compelling interest to shut churches down or not allow people to gather, people of faith to gather, for one example. And that was, and they argued that. We have to stop COVID. That's our compelling interest. And the Supreme Court actually said, no, that's not sufficient. Churches were being treated differently than other businesses, and that's also part of that analysis.
So if the government said, okay, churches are closed, but also strip clubs, also liquor stores.
Yeah, exactly.
Then maybe they would have gotten away with it, perhaps.
Possibly. Yeah.
But because
possibly.
they were picking and choosing.
They were picking and choosing, and that is part of that analysis. But I think that situation shows us that it truly is a very high barrier that the government has to show that they truly have a compelling interest that is extremely important to shut down an individual's rights to expression. So,
have you ever witnessed a time where it actually was okay? Like, is there any moment in history where the government did shut down an individual's rights or group or so, and have it be like, okay, that was actually legally sound? Is there
one really good example is, and every setting, I guess, has their own nuances related to free speech and free exercise, but one example is in the public schools, right? So the public schools do have an interest in protecting kids, right, while they're at school. And so part of the history of that is that, okay, we can stop kids from speaking if it's vulgar, for example, if it's sexually explicit, something like that. So that is when the government has said, we have a compelling interest in protecting these kids, some who are much younger potentially and maybe hearing this. And so that's one example.
Okay, well, that's fascinating because now you got the government saying it's perfectly okay to have sexual materials and all this stuff in class.
Very ironic, I know.
The pendulum is swung.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
But that's one, that is an example where, the government, public school system, has a legitimate, compelling interest there. And so they can't shut a student down based on the content of what they're saying, right, or their viewpoint on something.
Okay.
But they can shut down the vulgar speech, the explicit speech, something like that.
Right. Well, I mean, and that brings in the whole idea of thought police, right?
Yeah.
Just because somebody believes that.
Yeah.
They can. I mean, we had a case here in Coeur d'Alene. I don't want to call it a case when I'm sitting here with a lawyer. It wasn't an actual legal case, but it was an event. And I interviewed a student who was told by the administration at his school that he wasn't allowed to have conversations with his friends, his own friends, about he had the opinion that the kids that showed up to school in furry costumes were distracting to him in class. So he's got cat ears in front of him. He's trying
shocking
to look at the chalkboard.
Opinion.
Yeah, it's a shocking opinion, right? But he was told that he needs to stop even talking about it with his friends.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that was, I thought, well, that's going a little too far. Even I mean, maybe saying like, don't be shouting that throughout the school. Perhaps, I don't know, but to just say you can't have that opinion among your friends seemed way overstepping the bounds.
Correct.
And that's thought police in my mind.
Right, exactly. I agree.
So okay, all right. Well, why don't we do this? Let's. We've got some folks. We've got folks lined up in here. We got folks over here. It's so great to see folks out here. Is everybody familiar with Idaho Signal before? Yeah. All right. Good. Okay. We got some stickers up here too, so you can take a sticker for your water bottle on your way out too. All right. Let's do this. Let's take Jeremy. Let's take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and we are. What camera am I on? Which one should I should look at this one. We're going to come back, and we will discuss some of the bills that are pending in Boise with Attorney Kate Hartley. We'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Hey, there he is. There's Dave Miller, owner of LYFY. He'll be back here, up here with me in a few minutes. Hi there. We are live here at LYFY Public House in downtown Coeur d'Alene. Coffee, food, great times, lots of good company here. We are sitting here with Attorney Kate Hartley of the Pacific Justice Institute. Now, before we get into some of these bills, let me just back up here because you have cases that you have taken on in Idaho. You also are advising, at least getting legal advice on bills that are being run through Boise. What is your role at the Pacific Justice Institute? And you kind of give us a little, 30-second kind of intro to what the organization does.
Yeah, Pacific Justice Institute is a nonprofit law firm, and we specialize in free speech, religious freedom, so First Amendment issues, and parental rights. And so our primary role, I would say, is litigation. So we take on cases for folks that have been aggrieved in the subjects we've been talking about. So First Amendment free speech, free exercise of religion. We also take on a lot of Title VII cases, which are federal employment discrimination cases. We also do like to insert ourselves, if we can, into legislation across the country. Obviously, my focus is here in Idaho. And so we either promote or sometimes are in opposition of certain bills going through. We give legal opinions about them and the potential fallout, good or bad, regarding those. We're so lucky here too. We have so many, especially locally, we have so many really great legislators who we can have conversations with and just say, hey, this is an idea, I have just based on my experience, and it would be great if we could run a bill to address this. And so I think that's a huge advantage, especially being especially in this area. As you know, we've got really great legislators that take this stuff on. They really listen, and so really thankful to be involved with some of that.
When it comes to arguing these cases or looking at cases, normally these things are taken up at the federal level, but you've been involved in working on a bill because you've seen clients in Idaho and they have no way of redressing their grievances, if that's the right term, with the state of Idaho. In Idaho. So we hear a lot of legislators say, we need an Idaho solution for an Idaho problem, and there's a lot of problems. You're here, you've got cases. We'll talk about a couple of them if you don't mind. But these cases are being held at the federal level, which is overrun with cases. So tell us about this fight to make sure that we can pass a bill in Idaho that allows people to bring their case before Idaho courts and Idaho judges.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the federal Constitution, you have a right through a federal law, statute that was passed in the 1800s, it's a mechanism to sue under the U.S. Constitution if you've been aggrieved, okay? So that's how we file all of our cases in federal court under the First Amendment or really any other constitutional provision. We don't have an analogous statute in Idaho to sue under our state constitution, right? And what that means is that these cases have to be filed in federal court, right? And there's huge advantage potentially to being able to have these cases in state court versus federal court. And there's a lot of strategy to that. For example, if you are in a county where you say, gosh, I think that jury in that county would be more favorable in my case, I'm going to file it there, right? Versus a federal jury. That's just one example of the strategy that goes into making those potential decisions, right? Where to file a case. And so I think this is important for individual rights for people in Idaho if they can choose potentially to have the option to sue under our state constitution, keep it in state court. We can develop our own state case law on the issue, meaning we don't have to follow federal case law by federal judges, which, again, federal judges are appointed by presidential administrations, and so, there's all over the board, federal judges all over the board there, I'm just going to say that. And so it's a way to keep it internal to Idaho. We can develop our own case law. We can actually say we value free speech or the free exercise of religion even more than federal case law, even more than the U.S. Constitution, and we can do that. So I think that would be great for our state to have that. And I'm thankful that we have legislators who are trying to present that. I know it's been an uphill battle for them, and I think they should keep pressing that. I do think that would be huge to protect the individual rights of people in Idaho.
Yeah. Well, and we know that the bill we're talking about is House Bill 517, I believe. So House Bill 517 is still making its way through the system here. So I know that there's legislators there was some debate in committee over some terms or some language that's in there, and that happens with all these bills. It's really frustrating to sit on the outside and be like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a good bill. It's getting done, I think of the mask mandate bill. Like, how many times has that come through and they still find reasons to say, well, what if a cop wants to put on a mask on a tuberculosis-loaded criminal? It's like, well, then put a mask on him. Right. But for us just walking shopping and walking around the city, we don't need to have a mask mandate. Okay, don't get me started. All right, I want to get into, there was a high-profile case that you recently settled, and it happened in Kellogg. And you guys remember this. It was there was a bus driver who showed up at a rally. I was there. You were there too, I think. Well, I don't want to put you under the bus, but she might have been there. I don't know. I was definitely there, and we were there supporting Travis, that's a whole other case that you're representing as well. But the bus driver was off duty, right? He was off duty that day, and he's a beloved bus driver. Everybody loves him. His name's Dakota, and he showed up with a flag, big American flag. He was the only one there with a giant flag, and he was just there with the crowd. And waving the flag and supporting the free speech rights of Travis. And while he was there, he got a phone call and he walked away, and it was his supervisor telling him that he was fired from being a school bus driver because he was at this protest. Incredible. He was off duty, not working that day. And because he showed up and protested against the school and against the school district, he was fired on the spot. And I remember hearing that and thinking, holy cow, like that he's got a case. I mean, you can't do that, And so that quickly fell in your lap.
Yes.
So that's what happened. What happened next?
So we filed a complaint in federal court on his behalf. And yeah, like you said, government employees like Dakota have constitutional rights. Those are not checked at the door. when they go to work, especially when they're not on duty. Like you said, he was not actively driving the bus. He was not at work. So he's allowed to have his own opinions. Can you believe that, right? Off duty. And even if those opinions are critical of his employer, his government employer. There's long-standing Supreme Court precedent on this issue. And so we filed a case on his behalf, and we recently settled it. So the school district did try to kind of make that right. Hopefully that's a deterrent.
Yeah, because
to them
so
doing
they
it again.
did settle it. And
Yes.
was it? Can you say that it was a monetary settlement? Is that allowed to be said?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't discuss the amount or anything like that.
Okay, so the government had and that's your tax dollars, right? So because and they like to say, oh, don't sue the government, it's your tax dollars. Well, stop violating rights. Protect our money. Protect our money. That's wasted money. I mean, not for Dakota now because his rights were violated, but that's the waste.
Didn't need to happen.
It didn't need to happen,
Yeah.
and so they have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure they don't violate rights, so they don't fall into a court case where they got to lose money.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. There's another bill that I asked you to look at, which was this compelled speech bill, because we talk a lot about how the government can't go after you for what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're seeing that governments and agencies are instituting rules that say you have to say these things. And there's a bill right now, House Bill 538. It's about compelled speech. It would essentially tell government employees, and maybe specifically they're looking at teachers and school staff, that you must, basically I'm going to say it, you must lie. You know, if you see a boy, student, and they call themselves a girl, and you refer to them as a boy, you're going to get punished or reprimanded or something.
Right.
What is wrong with this compelled speech from the government, from the legal standpoint?
Yeah, again, there's long-standing, very solid history of the Supreme Court saying you cannot compel someone to speak in something that they don't believe in, right? And many cases, again, at the Supreme Court level, have really strong language against this, meaning it's demeaning to make someone speak in a way they don't believe in. Is always violative of individual rights. And so this is a big clash we're seeing everywhere, as probably everybody knows. This whole issue of what happens when your personal belief or your religious belief is in conflict with someone else's opinion of themselves or a local anti-discrimination policy saying that if you don't utilize a certain pronoun, that is discrimination, either under a policy or a law or whatever it may be. So this is a big clash going on right now. Of course, my belief is that you're given religious freedom and free speech rights through the U.S. Constitution, and that trumps any local policy saying that it's discrimination if you don't address this person in a certain way. So this is a big clash happening, and it's unfortunate because I do think there are just practical ways around this to make everybody happy. That doesn't involve compelled speech, right? Calling someone just by a name, right? Just not having to go there, right? Not having to utilize the pronoun, and that's how. When we talk to clients who are in this position, potentially at work or school or whatever, that's the first thing we tell them. Will they accommodate you, so to speak, in a way that you are not having to use the pronoun or lie against your faith, right? Saying that boy's a boy, girl's a girl, and still make the other person happy.
That's not just faith, that's science.
True, of course, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And exactly.
Okay. And I know I cut you off. I'm sorry, real quick.
That's okay.
But this bill also, it seems to me that this bill would also protect the person who wants to refer to themselves as, as another gender or whatever. You can't compel that person to say, no, you have to say you're a boy.
Exactly.
This bill would protect that.
Exactly.
If the teacher said, no, you have to say that you have to call yourself a he.
Right.
Or she, it's right. That protects them, right?
Exactly, and I think, that's a great example of how I think we can make everybody happy, short of compelling someone to speak in a way they don't believe in.
Yeah.
And so I love this bill. If it makes it over to the Senate, I plan to testify in favor of it. Again, it's very, very well founded in constitutional precedent. I think it's a very significant issue going on. Again, I know they've mostly talked about it in the school setting, and it certainly is happening there. It's happening in lots of places, even private companies and such. So it's great.
Now,
it's a great bill.
Would a private company be allowed to, or maybe this goes back to the other case, you know? And so two things. Would a private company be allowed to, if somebody showed up outside their business, you know, if you didn't like what was happening at Target, and you worked at Target, and on your off-duty day you showed up with the protesters to protest against Target, could Target fire you? I mean, based on their...
No, not legally.
Not legally, no. Even if they had at-will employment, none of that contractual stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people bring that up, the at-will employment thing. That is true unless you were retaliated against for exercising a constitutional right. So that's where that comes in.
So even with a private party like Target said, well, we don't want you working here anymore because you keep giving us a bad name. That's not protected?
So Target, if it's truly a private entity, that would not fall under the First Amendment. I'm sorry to understand your question. Yeah. Now, the exception to that does come up sometimes is if the government is entangled with a private company. And so there's a big case actually addressing this right now that's going to be heard in the Supreme Court where the government was pressuring private social media companies to censor certain viewpoints, right? So it's a huge free speech issue there.
Is this what we were talking about earlier, the Missouri versus Biden case?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, you guys familiar with this, Missouri versus Biden? Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah. So oral argument on that is before the Supreme Court this month. Oh, fantastic. So that's going to be a big. It's going to be a big deal. And so again, if Target was entangled with the government, meaning they were getting advice from them, if they were, communicating about how they should handle certain situations, that type of thing. And again, obviously this came up a lot in COVID.
Yeah. But that's fascism.
Yeah.
That's the government working with business to violate your rights and rule by dictate. And that's what they're doing. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So keep an eye on that case. That's going to be significant.
Yeah, and I love listening to Supreme Court cases. Like I'll go back and they record them all. You can listen to the audio. You can go back like 60 years and listen to recordings of the Supreme Court. And I've done that. It's like a podcast. You throw it on, you listen, and the arguments it's really easy to follow. Yeah. Like you guys stand up there, and it's like sometimes you're like you talk in legalese, but at the end of the day, they bring up. It's all about analogies. They keep bringing up analogies, and I love analogies because that's how I operate.
Yep.
Okay. We got some people here. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Hartley? No? I'm putting you on the spot. So if you do have a question, if you think of a question, we'll throw it at Kate Hartley here. We are live at LYFY Public House in Downtown Coeur. We're trying this out. I think we got quite a few people showed up to hang out here. I don't know if you were just here already, but I'm glad to see you. And we're trying this remote thing out. So far, so good. Looks like we've had the most viewers we've ever had, right? At live, at least on this thing right here. Yeah. So that's pretty good. Anybody chatting? I don't know what, just trying to... No one question. Okay, good. Everybody's just watching. They're compelled. Oh, we have a question over here.
Yeah, so how does PGI raise its funds?
Okay, that's a great question. So how does Pacific Justice Institute raise funds?
Thanks for asking. So we are a nonprofit, so we do take donations. Again, we're all across the country. So again, I'm in charge of the state of Idaho, but we have attorneys everywhere. And we take donations.
Are you a C3?
Correct,
Okay.
Yes.
So that you can write it off.
Exactly.
These are write-off, tax-deductible donations.
Yes.
Right.
And we do take a small percentage from cases, that either have judgments or settle, much lower than most attorneys tend to take for that, but that keeps us going as well.
Yeah, very good. Okay, great question. Let's get that out there. Yes, a question over here.
Yeah, I'd like to know your views on the anti-SLAPP bill and what is it there? It's a way to bring that sort of level.
Okay, so we have a question on the anti-SLAPP bill. If you watched last week, we ended the last week with an interview with Senator Brian Lenny, and then we watched the whole floor debate as that bill went down in flames. People were calling each other on the phone trying to switch their votes. So the anti-SLAPP bill, can you kind of go through a little bit of an explanation, and then what do you see is there's another path forward?
That's a great question. We definitely in favor of a bill like that. Essentially what that would have done is prevent frivolous lawsuits from being filed. And, you know, we only file strong cases, obviously. I like to say.
Winnable cases.
That's right. And so certainly it gives any lawsuit a bad name, so, you know, when frivolous lawsuits are happening. So that's not a good thing for other cases. It's not, obviously it's a horrible thing to clog up the court system, and the individuals having to go through the pain of a lawsuit. Even if you win, it's a very long, arduous, expensive process to litigate. It's very, very difficult. So yes, we were in favor of that bill. Was really, you know, didn't like seeing that didn't go through. As far as a path forward, that's more of a political question. Gotcha. I don't know.
Well, when it comes when it comes to the, you know, defamation, like that's not protected by, you know, on a 50,000-foot level, defamation, slander, all that stuff. People sue over that because they have a real case behind it.
Right,
so
they're actually damaged.
It's not protected by the First Amendment.
Right, it's not protected speech.
It's not protected speech. So can you go into, like, I mean, I can call you a name right now. I can say, hey, I don't like you. You're a this, you're a that. You can't sue me over that.
No. Yeah.
But if I were to follow you around the city, calling you that all the time with a sign over your head, that might be harassment.
Yeah.
Right. But what are the differences? How does defamation and slander fall into that? Libel.
The key to defamation is that it has to be something false. Right. So it can't be an opinion. It can't be obviously anything that can be shown to be true. So to defame someone, you have to show that the statement was false and that the person knew it was false when they said it, and then it caused that person damages. I mean, that's, you know, a very brief overview of that. When these cases are filed that have no merit, either something was true, which means, you know, we can show, again, you have to go through the process to show that statement was true, and therefore it cannot be defamation, slander, libel, like you said. It's very destructive, you know, for someone to have to go through a big, long lawsuit when they don't need to, or they shouldn't have to. Right. And so the anti-SLAPP bill prevents those frivolous suits that don't have any merit from going forward. They get stopped really early on in the litigation process. And many states have very similar laws. We do not, obviously.
Right. Well, hopefully it'll come back.
I hope so.
You know,
I hope so.
It was Brian Lenny's been working. He worked on it a lot, and he had some really good support there. And so there's just politics.
Yeah,
politics
I know.
going on.
I can't answer the political questions.
I know. Yeah. So send it. Make sure he gets reelected. How about that? Send politicking for him here. Okay. Now. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the traditional family stuff that we're involved in here. So let's see. It's 13 after the hour. We will. Where's the camera? That one over there again? We'll be right back.
Spending this money surplus, which is not a surplus, it's an overcharging of the taxpayer.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
Okay, we are back live here at LYFY Public House with Attorney Kate Hartley. I want to talk to you. We had Senator Ben Taves and was on discussing this resolution about traditional families, a resolution that would celebrate traditional families in Idaho. And Representative Joe Alfieri presented the bill or the resolution in committee, and he had to go through the motions a couple times. There's some people that had some issues with the wording inside this. But can you explain? Because you have a role in the tradfamily.org, right?
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit into what this resolution is, and or maybe what the organization is, and then the resolution. But I'll throw it to you and to kind of explain how this all fits together.
Yeah, so this is a resolution aimed at giving us a traditional family values month in the state of Idaho, right, from Mother's Day to Father's Day. And it's just truly an opportunity to celebrate the traditional family. And as we know, the non-traditional family has kind of a platform for this and a way that they celebrate their beliefs, and the traditional family doesn't. And so that's what we're seeking to establish. In developing this idea, we just perceive that this viewpoint is being suppressed, right? So the viewpoint that the traditional family is best and that it is the best way to raise children, it's the best thing for communities, men and women, everyone involved, is being suppressed. And I think, some of my own lawsuits show that, right? That people have been punished for expressing their positive view of the traditional family. And so that's how this idea was developed. Another local person, Conrad Woodall, and I kind of got together, and he called me one day and said, okay, what can we do? This view is being suppressed. Legally, what can we do? And I said, well, we can't, shut down, the other views on this, but we can give this view a better platform.
That's what I love about it. It's positive. It's like we're not going to attack other people. We just everybody else likes to wave their flags and march around. Well, let's have traditional families do. Let's have families do that.
That's exactly
right. Positive.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I know the sponsors have said this a lot. That this is not meant to disparage anybody else. And I know that's kind of the opposition that we've heard on this, and that is not the intention. It is to celebrate the traditional family, give them a platform, let this particular viewpoint flourish as well, right? And this really, for me, connects to the First Amendment. Viewpoint discrimination isn't allowed. If you're allowing a viewpoint in an opposite viewpoint, you have to allow the other one. And so that's where this was kind of born.
Right.
And so Conrad did a lot of the drafting of this, and we kind of put it together, and we went to Ben Taves and said, would you like to present this? And he immediately, was in favor of it and has been very, very helpful in getting this going.
Yeah.
It is seeing issues in the legislature, which is disheartening,
to
say the least.
Yeah,
but
I've watched some of these hearings, and a lot of the attacks come from Democrats.
Yeah.
A lot of the attacks come from the side that doesn't particularly think that traditional families need to be celebrated anymore, or whatever it is, whatever their motives are. But
even religion, that people have said, this is a religious view, and so we can't allow that in the state.
Oh, wow.
We've heard that. So
yeah.
That is not true in the First Amendment. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
It's not a First Amendment violation to have Traditional Family Values Month. I can say that for sure.
We're affirming Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
We all maybe could have seen this 10 years ago, but we can see how Mother's Day may, the next ad for Mother's Day from Target may be, trans men walking around being like, it's Mother's Day, celebrating me. She's shaking her head. You see that, right? We can see that literally. It could happen. This next Super Bowl commercial, Father's Day could have, So let them do it. Let them do it, but we're going to have our...
But we want to have our say as well.
That's right.
And that's really all this is about, and just to celebrate, traditional families the way God intended, and its effect on children and moms and dads and the community at large. Yeah. And that's all it's about.
Okay, so real quick, let's go through this. So week one is a celebration of motherhood. Mm-hmm. So that starts on Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. The next week is a celebration of sons, brothers, and uncles. And week 3 is a celebration of grandparents. Week 4, a celebration of daughters, sisters, and aunts, or aunties, right? Week 5, a celebration of fatherhood and the marriage between a man and a woman. And grads. dads and grads, right? They always stepped on the dads with the grads. But yes, so that's great. I guess, is there a thought between like what would happen during those weeks? When you say a celebration of daughters and sisters and aunts, like what do we do? What do we plan on? What are the plans?
Definitely. We would love, especially if this gets officially established in our state, what we would love to see is individual communities using this to plan events, plan, a 5K event, for example, around, Mother's Day, right? And just to celebrate mothers and their role and the traditional family beyond that. And really, we would love to see people take this and run with it however they want to. And ultimately, we'd love to see it go to other states too. Right. If this passes here, we would love to see it replicated elsewhere and just get huge celebrations and events surrounding this.
Well, you're already starting it. We don't need a resolution to do this. We just need
to do
it, right?
We don't.
Yeah.
I think
a resolution gives it a big voice.
It does, and I think that is important. But you're right; it's not necessary to plan these events by any means. And I think that's the plan, to have events surrounding this viewpoint during that time frame.
Okay, so we always want to make sure we give people things to do, to be involved, make sure there's action items and stuff. What do you think is the best? What do you think is the best use of, when it comes to free speech, when it comes to religious freedoms? I'm putting you on the spot, but what do you think is the best use of people's time right now? Should we be phoning up the legislature and pushing through some of these bills? Should we be just starting to rally around, a Mother's Day event or something? Like or can we do all of it? What is one thing that we can make sure that we do?
I think right now, since we are in legislative session and there are, free speech, freedom of religion bills going through, I definitely connect with legislators. Again, in this area, North Idaho, we have really good legislators who are all, generally speaking, on board with these. But if you know people in other parts of the state whose legislators are not necessarily on board with this, I think that's crucial. I think we need to, these bills for some reason see a lot of opposition. And so I think the government wants to protect itself, I guess, which is interesting to me because we were founded on individual rights. The government is already very well protected. Individuals are not. And so, but that is a big battle in our legislature. Obviously elections have consequences to that as well, and that's coming up.
Yes, they do.
So pay attention to that. Get other people engaged who are not. That's a huge problem. Just lack of voting, lack of knowledge, lack of involvement. I perceive that as a huge issue. The percentage of people who actually vote is abysmal.
Well, and when you have the mainstream press, Jeremy, did you point this out? How somebody pointed out that the CDA press, the morning of the caucus, the front page of the paper, there was not a mention at all that the party that, the most registered party in the city and the county here, there was no story on the front page of the press. That's what we're talking about. So unless you were watching Idaho Signal, you had no idea that there was a caucus going on. No, but that's why we're doing this.
A lot of people I know did not know there was a caucus. That is a real problem.
And because they probably are stuck watching the CD or reading the CDA press and watching, KHQ or whatever, whatever doesn't talk about this stuff. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Everybody give Kate a round of applause if you're up here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me today.
Okay, we're going to try and see if we can get Dave Miller over here. I don't know, he's in the back making sandwiches or something, or filing away some paperwork. But you see him? Okay, good. We're going to take a quick break. Where's the camera again? We're over here. We'll take a quick break. We're going to bring Dave in real quick. Thanks again. We'll be right back.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
All right, folks, we are back live at LYFY Public House, downtown Coeur d'Alene. There's a nice crowd, nice busy crowd today, and I am pleased to bring on to the program here my good friend here, Dave Miller, owner, proprietor of LYFY Public House. Dave, thanks for letting us come in today.
Oh, dude, it was so cool. It was. I had all kinds of people ask me what's going on, and I was able to tell them. And this was awesome, man. Thank you for hosting it here.
Absolutely, no. It's always. I mean, I come here. We come here a lot. I've met a lot of people here. We follow your social media channels, and you talk about all the things that happen at LYFY. I just wanted to let you kind of like tell everybody what LYFY is all about. What you hope this provides to the community.
Yeah, well, interesting. When I bought it, when Brooke and I bought it a couple of years ago, we literally walked in and thought this would be just a really cool community spot to get the community together, to connect. And one of the things that I enjoy is being a part of people building memories. So we do, concerts and comedy shows and dance recitals and dance, lessons and theme parties and just a lot of different things and things like this. This is great for the community. It just creates memories. I mean, probably anybody that has watched this or been here today, probably a month from now, they'll be like, oh, remember when we were down at LYFY, we saw that show, it was awesome. And so I get to be a part of that, and it was super cool. Today I had, on Wednesdays, I do something called the Patriot Pour. And from 8 to 10, I do current and former military and current and former first responders. And we just do free coffee for them. And it's such a cool group of people that come, and there's no agenda, there's no format, it's just talk and connect.
Yeah,
And
tell us about that, because you've got a lot of people that do events here, but they also have weekly. I mean, I've seen businesses have their meetings here and all that stuff. But this Patriot Pour is really cool because it's grown, right? It started out as just a couple of guys, right? Hanging out as veterans, talking, and then it kind of grew from there.
Yeah. So Ed is a gentleman that I have 5 guys that come in here every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And one of those gentlemen has passed on, Bill. I just went to his funeral yesterday, and it was so sad. It was, even though it was just a customer, it was kind of like it was losing a friend. And so that was tough. So my condolences to his family, MJ, and his son. But Ed had said to me 3 or 4 months ago, he said, I mean, there's a lot of veterans that are isolated. They have, especially Vietnam vets, they came back and for whatever reason isolated themselves, dealing with a lot of stuff, and have stayed isolated. And he wanted to do something where we could bring them together without having them make any type of commitment or any type of sign up or anything like that. And I said, man, I would love to host something like that. And that's really how it started. And it's just it's picking up steam. And today we had 5 or 6 new people here today, and 2 of them specifically told me that they don't get out much, but this is going to be part of their weekly activity. So I was just, it's such an honor to be a part of things like that, and I consider those things connecting events, and I know I'm a coffee shop basically, but man, I really feel like I'm in the connecting business and the memory making business, and when I can be a part of that, and it lights me up.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming in, stopping by, and letting us come into the big round of applause for Dave Miller and LYFY Public House.
Thank you. Wow, that's kind of cool.
Applause,
yeah.
Hey, man, if a crowd shows up, I'm going to ask for applause.
Follow me wherever you want, man. That's cool.
Follow Dave right now. All right. Well, thanks, man.
Hey, thank you so much, man.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Are we out of time? Yeah, we're out of time. That's perfect.
Hey,
timing.
see you later.
Yeah. All right, folks. So we'll be back. Hopefully, we'll be back live. We've got to make sure all this equipment makes it back to the studio, and we'll come back. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Remember, there's some stickers here for your water bottles or whatnot. Take those on your way out, and we will see you guys. Am I back on this camera over here? All right. We need lights on all the cameras. Go to IdahoSignal.com if you want to help fund our operations here. You can see how it really what it really takes to put all this stuff together. But send us a message, send us some love, and we'll be back tomorrow live, figuring out what the heck happened today in Boise. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Bill, I think it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.